We thank Craig. We thank Craig Stephenson for joining us today, and he's going to talk about his business regulated human compliance and how he can help small businesses. So thank you, Craig, and take it away.
Thank you, Ann. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. I wanted to first say, again, thank you to everybody for joining, and that we are not providing any legal advice here. We're actually focused on the Fulton Montgomery region for small business in regards to cybersecurity. I've been doing this for far too many years and have had the privilege of working with even the FBI just up until 2 weeks ago in regards to helping local businesses. Our company's expertise is in SOC 2, which is a compliance regulation, HIPAA for the medical field, NIST protocols, and the New York State SHIELD Act, which we'll be going over today. We'll also be covering some of the other regulations that small businesses should be aware of, specifically in regards to website compliance. Not something that we do, but at least we'll bring this information to your attention so you can have whoever's creating your website or managing your website to be able to address it if there should be something to address. Again, New York State SHIELD Act, why it's important, what is private information, and what you as a small business have to do to be able to stay compliant. The ADA compliance, which I think you're all aware of as a small business, you need to make sure that anyone with handicaps has access to your facilities and has proper mobility around your facility. However, there's also a compliancy in regards to your website, which is mandatory, and the fines are quite hefty. And actually, it's more of the legal issues we're going to discuss today. The New York State SHIELD Act. This is something that's actually been around since 2005. Information Security Breach Notification Act was the original law that was in place. This was updated back in 2019 and put into law in New York State. So under that law, any access to computerized data that comprises the confidentiality, security, or integrity of private data comes under this law. So any personal information concerning a natural person in combination with any of one of the following data elements, all right, so social security number, driver's license, account number, biometric information, username or email address, and password credentials. So if you have any combination of the two of those, all right, which we all do, we all have HR files, we all have information on our clients, or even a business card sitting in your office is technically that type of information. So, and this relates to any business at all in New York State, even if you're just a single proprietor, as I am. So the SHIELD Act requires any person or business that maintains private information to adopt administrative, technical, and physical safeguards. So what we deal with here in our team is designating one or more employees to coordinate the security program. So that defines the fact that you have to have a security program as a small business. There has to be somebody in charge of that security program, and it has to be maintained at least on an annual basis. The training and managing of employees in the security programs, practices, and procedures. So there needs to be a formal way of actually tracking the fact that your employees have reviewed, again, these on an annual basis. Selecting service providers capable of maintaining appropriate safeguards and requiring those safeguards by contract. So that means that if you have an internet provider, that would be part of your policy. So you manage that and you actually contract them. They have certain services and policies and procedures on their end that then impact your business. So if they go down, then you can't run your business, that type of thing. So this is where your policies and procedures come into play as to which service providers you have, which of those service providers provide what service to you to maintain your business, and how you manage that as a business owner. You actually have to adjust the security program in light of business changes or new circumstances. You have to assess the risk in network and software design. And that's just not as in somebody who designs a network, but it's somebody who actually has a physical network within their facility. So how is it built? How is it laid out? And how are you protecting it? Assessing risks in the information processing, transmission, and storage. So if you have credit cards, there is normally PCI that you have to follow in regards to that. So you would then have to look at how you're maintaining your credit card information, where that's being stored, who's managing it. Is it somebody that is reliable and safe, which any reputable credit card company is. Assessing the risks of the information storage and disposal. So if you're going to get rid of something, say you're going to get rid of a computer system that you've had for 5 years and you're going to upgrade it, you can't just take that computer and put it in the garbage or take it to the recycle. You actually have to take the hard drive out and make sure that the data on it is destroyed, so that any information that is customer facing or has customer information on it is not falling into somebody's hands. One of the big things that we see is photocopiers. If a company has a photocopier and they use the photocopier for 5 years and then turn it in for a new lease, and that photocopier goes out the door, if somebody then decides to take the hard drive out of that, they have a copy of everything that you have faxed and photocopied off of that machine. So therefore, all of your data has now been breached, and therefore you would fall under these laws. So obligations of a business when a breach occurs. And a data breach is, think of a data breach as one of the possible consequences of a cyber attack. So the cyber attack is the physical action of trying to get your data from an outside party, where a data breach is one of the possible consequences is your system locked up and you can't get to it. Has your data been taken and is now on the dark web? So again, different things to look at in regards to what happens if your data is compromised. The law requires that a person or business notify the affected consumers after discovering a breach. So again, the breach is the consequence. So if you are attacked, but you don't breach, then you don't have to worry about notifying customers because no information is lost. However, you do have to report to the New York State Attorney General's office that you believe that none of your data has actually left your facility. So again, going back to cyber attack, if you're attacked, but you don't believe that the data has physically left your facility, you would then have to file a report with the New York State Attorney General's office. If you do have information that has left your facility, then again, you have to report this to the New York State Attorney General's office, normally the New York State Police, all right? And then you have to notify newspapers, normally TV stations. They will actually specify what they want depending on the size of the data loss, how many customers of yours their information has left your facility. Then that information goes to Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. It's all reported, and then those people, normally you would have to then pay for them to have some kind of protection put in place, normally for about 1 year, which is the standard in the industry. So there are some exceptions. Basically, if the cost of providing the regular notification would exceed $250,000, then that is basically your top cap in regards to the financial penalty that would be involved. If the affected class of persons exceeds 500,000, then you would be basically guided by the New York State Attorney General's office in regards to what to do. And if the entity or business does not have sufficient contact information. So this again would be where you would then have to provide public notification in regards to newspapers, television, radio, that type of thing. And again, this document will be available to everybody after this event. So here's the serious part. What are the penalties for violation of the New York State SHIELD Act? Just for failure to maintain reasonable safeguards, the court may impose a civil fine of up to $5,000 per violation. If you are breached and you fail to notify the New York State Attorney General's office, New York State Police, it's the civil penalty is up to $20 per instance or per record. All right, up to $250,000. Now, I know as a small business, this would kill me. I wouldn't be able to afford it. So this again is why this is so important for small business to understand what the rules are, what the regulations are, and how to be able to maintain safety on these types of things. So let's look at an estimated data breach cost. So this was a calculator that is available online. What I did is I chose retail, small business, 1 to 50 employees, and we've only checked off the personal identifiable information, financial records, and customer lists. All of the other items here, trade secrets, intellectual property, classified information, operational data, none of this has been checked off. So again, you can see the average dollar-wise is the industry average. And a small business, again, is going to pay a lot less, but you're still going to be paying. Overall risk assessment, recovery time to get your business back up and running is 21 days. So just imagine if you had payroll for all of your employees, even if it's just 1 or 2, and you could not get your business up and running for almost a month just because you had a breach. Estimated exposure of records, about 1,800. The reputational impact, this is something that a lot of people do not acknowledge when they realize that something has happened, is that when they actually have to go out and say that they as a company have had a breach, they don't realize that just the impact to their business on having to admit that this has happened, that they haven't taken the precautions to be able to protect the information within their facility. So the regulatory exposure on that is about $600,000. Granted, I don't think the government would then go for the maximum for a small business because they know it would destroy them immediately. Total estimated cost on something like that is about $300,000. The second part that I'd like to go through here, all right, is the ADA website compliance. ADA is the requirement to make sure, again, as I said earlier, that you have accessibility for people with handicaps coming into your disabilities, coming into your facility to be able to come in, use your facilities properly without any impedance. But you're also required to have that for your website. So inaccessible web content is one of the largest issues in regards to fines and legal issues within New York State. What you need to follow is the WCAG 2.1 website content accessibility guidelines. It's basically a set of recommendations for people with disabilities, low vision, mobility device users, cognitive and learning disabilities. Basically, these guidelines require that things are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Basically, the facts that we were looking at for 2024, there were over 4,000 lawsuits filed in state and federal courts. The biggest thing here is that there's a notable increase in the state level filings in New York and California, which out of all of those lawsuits accounted for 40% of all cases. on average, you're looking at a settlement range of $5,000 to $20,000 for not having a compliant website. So what you need for that, and actually one of the things that you'll come across is a lot of companies out there going, well, we will sell you a web overlay where you just put a plugin on your website. It'll put a little logo in the bottom corner. What we're finding now is that those web overlays are actually causing more problems than they actually do solve. So therefore, most of those people with web overlays are actually finding that they're getting sued more often. So something to keep in mind in regards to those. And if anybody wants information on the types of web overlays and what you need, please reach out and I can give you my experience on it. So what you need, first of all, is you need an accessibility statement. Basically states that you understand the law, that you understand that your website may not be perfect, and that if anybody does come across a problem that as a disabled person, they cannot properly access your website, that you are willing to, number one, you provide them a way to contact you, multiple ways to contact you actually is a good thing, and that you will then address those issues as quickly as possible. So the accessibility statement is normally just a blanket cover so that it allows somebody accessing your website to say, I found a problem. I can't get to your website because of this. Could you please fix it? So if you were to be sued, and again, this is just my own personal opinion, not legal advice, a judge would look at that and say, did you reach out to the business owner and say that you had a problem? Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Did they fix it in time? Yes, they did. No, they didn't. So therefore, that is where the judgment would lay. And again, normally you're looking at $5,000 to $20,000 fines in those types of things. So that is the very quick presentation that I put together, and I'd like to open the floor up to any questions.
Thank you, Craig.
I have a question. I don't know if you want me to put it in the chat or if I can just say it.
No, go ahead.
I am just a very small art business, and I have joined forces with an organization called Art Storefronts, which creates or has created a website for me, and I don't really know much of anything about it yet, but I'm wondering, this is something that can be viewed by people in all states and even in other countries. I'm just wondering how I work with them in order to be in compliance.
What you would do is I can, and I'm happy to do it for anybody, run a free scan on your website, and I can provide a report in regards to, normally the largest one that we find is contrast errors. So if you have a light font on a light background, very difficult for people to see. That is one of the largest areas of lawsuit issues. So, but I'm happy to run a report for anybody. And again, the application is free. It's out there on the web. Anybody can use it. And normally what happens, the unfortunate thing is that a lawyer will find somebody that is handicapped. They will basically use them as an assistant, and they will go and they will file lawsuits. They will just go around the web and find different websites, and they will file lawsuits. Normally these specific lawyers, and there's 3 or 4 around the country that are noted for this. They will just go and just put out lawsuits 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 a day, and just hit people up, and there's no recourse, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think, Craig, if you could just go over if everyone's kind of digesting all this information, because it's if you're not aware of it, it's a lot. If how they can get a hold of you, and that's very generous for a free scan, just making sure that small businesses are compliant, just how we can get a hold of you after this session.
Yep, my email is cstevenson@rhcompliance.com. My direct cell phone, 518-281-1678. And that offer is open to any chamber member. Happy to do a free web scan, dark web scan, to see if your information is out on the dark web. Normally we find at least 1 or 2 instances, and we can actually see some of the passwords that are out there. You can just basically, it's a concern that because there's been so many breaches over the last number of years that everybody's data is out there, and they just take it, they find it, and they'll use it to exploit your business. And I do apologize, this is very condensed. If anybody wants further information or greater detail, I am happy to either meet with you directly or on a phone call or a Zoom call and go over things in detail. But I wanted to be cognizant of everybody's time on a Monday morning.
We appreciate that. And this is totally different from if you have virus protection or firewall, correct? Like this is something that is another piece of being compliant with technology.
That is correct. The firewall and making sure that your switches and network are up to date and have proper patches, that is one piece of the puzzle.
Greg, sorry.
Go ahead. I'll mute.
I just had one quick question to see your recommendations on. I juggle a lot of passwords for clients. I've used various password managers over the years. I was just curious if you had one that you kind of feel more confident in than others.
The one that I personally use is Keeper. And the reason I use it is it's one that has never been breached. And any password manager that you use, I would recommend highly on anything, multi-factor authentication. So username, password, and then it's got to either go to your phone or to your email to be able to then provide another key phrase or a numerical phrase, just like you would with your bank.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I know I've used LastPass in the past and they've had data breaches. So I appreciate your feedback on Keeper.
Any further questions before we wrap up?
No, just thank
We're
you.
good. Yep.
The time
Thank
to
you very much, everybody, for attending. I wish we had a few more, but it was a good group, and I hope I provided a little bit of valuable information.